For a long time, I thought I was telling myself a love story. I thought I had found someone who was confident, strong, and knew exactly what they wanted out of life. And if I'm being honest, after everything I had been through, that certainly felt comforting. What I didn't realize was that little by little, I was giving away pieces of myself without even noticing. Not all at once, not in some dramatic moment, just one compromise at a time, one excuse at a time, one silence at a time. Until one day, I looked up and barely recognized the woman I had become. This isn't a story about blame. It's not a story about labels. It's a story about what happened when I stopped trusting myself and what it took to find my way back. And if you've ever stayed somewhere longer than your spirit wanted to stay, this story might feel familiar. Nothing about it felt dramatic in the beginning. In fact, if you had asked me back then, I would have told you I was happy. I would have told you I had found someone confident, ambitious, and driven. What I didn't realize was that every conversation, every decision, every moment somehow found its way back to him. At first, it seemed harmless. If I shared something exciting that happened in my day, somehow the conversation shifted back to something he was dealing with. If I talked about a challenge I was facing, we were discussing his problems within minutes instead. I noticed it, but I ignored it. I told myself relationships weren't supposed to be about keeping score. I told myself love meant listening. What I didn't realize was that I was listening to everyone except myself. I remember sitting across from him one evening at dinner. I had been carrying something heavy for weeks and finally worked up the courage to talk about it. I needed support. I needed someone to hear me. As I spoke, I watched his eyes drift toward his phone. Then he interrupted me halfway through my sentence to tell me about something that had happened at work. Within minutes, my problem had disappeared completely from the conversation. Somehow, we were talking about him again. I remember sitting there quietly, staring at my plate, feeling foolish for thinking this conversation would be different. But instead of speaking up, I swallowed my disappointment and told myself he was just distracted. I became very good at making excuses. The strange thing about losing yourself is that it rarely feels like losing yourself while it's happening. It feels like being patient. It feels like being understanding. It feels like being supportive. It feels like being mature. And before you realize it, you've built an entire life around someone else's feelings while neglecting your own. There were birthdays when my plans became his plans, vacations where my preferences became his preferences, conversations where my voice became smaller and smaller until eventually I stopped sharing certain things altogether. It wasn't because anyone told me not to. It was because experience taught me that my thoughts would eventually be pushed aside anyway. So I learned to stay quiet before I could be dismissed. The hardest part wasn't feeling invisible. The hardest part was realizing I had helped create the situation. Every time I ignored my own needs, every time I accepted less than I deserved, every time I convinced myself that speaking up would only cause conflict. Little by little, I was teaching people that my feelings could wait. And eventually they did. Everyone else's needs came first. Everyone else's emotions came first. Everyone else's priorities came first. Mine became an afterthought. But even then, I wasn't ready to face the truth. I still believed if I loved harder, tried harder, gave more, understood more, things would eventually change. What I didn't understand was that the more I disappeared, the more comfortable everyone became with my absence. And the more I abandoned myself, the easier it became for others to do the same.
You held me like a picture, never touched my skin. You love the shape I gave you, not the truth within. I stood in your hallway, fading in plain sight. All your sweet attention still left me out of light. Saw a dream that you named it mine, but I was breaking all that time. I kept on saying, look at me now. You kept on reaching for a